Hi, my name is Steve Kemp. I'm a Senior Director of Customer Success with Project Canary, a high-fidelity ESG data and analytics and environmental assessments company based here in Denver. And I'm joined today by Cary Hatch and Alexa Fetch with one of our valued partners, PureWest Energy, an operator in the Pinedale. Welcome, Cary and Alexa.
Yeah, thanks for having us. So I'm an environmental manager for PureWest.
And I'm Alexa and the ESG Analyst there.
What was it like to go through the Project Canary assessment program? And what was it like to work with our engineers?
So it is definitely a rigorous program. We're talking a lot of data, a lot of paperwork, documentation, processes, and so we have over 3,000 wells, so we broke it up into 3 phases. Our first phase was done last year to get us started. We worked with 69 pads, and that way we could get our foot in the door, learn about you guys and how the process works. And so now we are going to certify the next 2 phases this year. And I think now that we know how to provide documentation and how to speak with the group, that we're able to move quicker.
As a company, Project Canary is aware of the sheer volume of data that you guys are presented with, right? These monitors are collecting, every second a methane concentration, wind speed, direction. What do we do with it? How do we optimize or operationalize the information that we're collecting from these monitors? So I think that's one of the reasons we've shared with you guys some of the work that we're doing on some early quantification algorithms, applying some machine learning so that some of the annotations that you guys put in place regarding the events that you do pick up actually allow the system over time to be more reliable when it comes to detecting fugitive emissions events.
Right, and we're aligning with you guys in terms of that's kind of where we want to see the data go. Or the processing and the analytics for that. Whatever can make it simplest so that when we send out an OGI team, it is effective and actionable and it's reducing an emission source.
Yeah, it can allow you to more efficiently deploy the existing resources that you guys have in place to learn more about your operations and detect and mitigate fugitive emissions events.
And if we are able to use our resources that we currently have in place, and by using the continuous emission monitors to help with that so that we're not having to bring on more folks, we're able to make it more efficient.
If the addition of kind of site level continuous emissions monitoring allows an operator to either more quickly detect an event or more efficiently deploy their existing resources, that could be a significant value add to a producer's operations. I was really interested to hear that the data is sought after by consumers and your customers. So PureWest's customers, you mentioned the deal in the Northwest, is looking for this emissions data, and we'll talk about the data that's generated through the TrustWell environmental assessments at the same time. But I'm curious if you have any other feedback or insight as to why they're seeking that data.
I think that the data helps us in terms of showing, it gives us a level of transparency and assurance that what we are doing and how we are operating is working towards reducing emissions, and basically to show that we're on the right track. It's not only just our customers that are play with this, it's also our investors and even the public, the community that we work and live in, that plays a role, and being able to be more transparent helps us with that, whether it be through the continuous monitoring or through the TrustWell process and showing our ESG performance,
And I think it's also just in general, the way of the world is changing to have a more transparency to our industry so that they can see that we are doing it correctly and that the product they're receiving from us is just as good for the environment, right? It's coming down to the ESG standards that we now live by.
So obviously one of the recurring themes here is there's value in the data, but given so much scope and such increased resolution into your operations, what do we do with it? As an ESG analyst, how do you think about environmental data, and why did you decide to pursue an environmental assessment program through TrustWell?
So like Cary had said, PureWest has a really good story to tell. We wanted to use a third party to assess the work that has been done related to air, water, wildlife mitigation, our community involvement. And so PureWest takes pride in all of our innovating aspects, including ESG. So when we looked at certification process, we determined that the involvement would be highlighted in the excellence of our work through TrustWell.
In thinking about an environmental assessment program, what led you to choose TrustWell, given that it's a well-by-well assessment?
I think it comes down to the fact that TrustWell is very technical and thorough about their assessment, and it shows the evidence of our sustainability practices and performances that we want to develop and assess to the community and our board and in general us as a company.
And did the results of the assessment program or the working relationship that was established between PureWest and Project Canary's TrustWell engineers provide your company with any opportunities for continuous improvement?
So I think it provided us a lot of information of what we were doing correctly. There were some documentations that did provide us with information that we have taken in and used that innovation to improve some of our pads. Like I said, though, most of our pads came back as platinum, so it was nice to have that backup documentation saying, yes, you guys have been doing it correctly, or you guys are doing a good job. Right. So the one thing we took in was the monitors. We did add monitors on pads to get us to that next level of improvement.
Right, and I think a recurring theme that I'm hearing is validation, right? There's a ton of work that you two, the rest of your team, PureWest as a whole, has put into being a responsible operator. And so the deployment of continuous emission monitoring technology is at the pad level, it's at the site level. It gives you data that you didn't have of the way your site might be operating. And similarly, TrustWell focuses in onto the wellbore. And it looks at 600 different data points, and it looks at all the 4 categories that you mentioned: air, land, water, community, wildlife mitigation in an area like Wyoming where that's particularly important. How have the environmental assessments been beneficial or supportive of PureWest's ESG goals?
So our goals as a company, as we said, is to be the best operator with the highest ESG standards. Mm-hmm. And so having the TrustWell certification, it has specific laid out points, and it is asking specific wildlife, water, and we can use those data that we have collected through years to give to you guys and have validation back, saying that we have a high standard, or if we miss something, where could we improve? And I think a lot of operators have never seen that. And yes, in Wyoming we have a little bit different standards already, but it is nice as an operator to know where we can improve and the specific layout points.
Help me understand why the benefit of having a well-by-well assessment might be more valuable than a field-wide assessment.
So especially for us with 3,000 wells, having a field-wide assessment might not actually be accurate. So we have pads, we have synopses, we have pad expansions, and so when we're looking at a well bore, we're looking at when it was drilled and how it was drilled and who drilled it. So some of ours have been acquired by other companies, and so we are assessing how they drilled as well as how we now continue to operate it.
It's not only just about looking for areas for improvement, it's how do you build on top of that? What you're already doing well, what can you do better and how can you continue to show that improvement or that, that progression and innovation, because that's kind of where this is going.